Welcome to the Coilfang Reservoir. On today's lore tour, we'll be taking a deep dive into one of the most important strategic resources in all of Outland. This massive subterranean water station houses a plethora of exotic flora, fauna, and natural life. And if left unopposed, it will allow Lady Vashj and her sinister Coilfang naga to not only drain the entirety of Zangarmarsh, but also give them complete control over the planet's water supply. So who are these Coilfang naga, and why do they want all the water so badly? Well, as Illidan Stormrage himself put it, whoever controls the water, controls the Outlands. Basically, water has been pretty hard to come by ever since the planet was torn asunder. And given that the majority of the remaining water is found within the swampy region known as Zangarmarsh, which is actively being drained by the Coilfang naga, water has been on a fast track to becoming the rarest resource on the planet. And with dominance over that resource comes an immense amount of power over the planet's remaining denizens, many of whom the Outland's ruler, Illidan Stormrage, would love to have under his control. And Lady Vashj, being one of Illidan's most trusted lieutenants, has made it her life's goal to gain and maintain totalitarian control over that water supply. Now, the Coilfang are a tribe of Naga who pose a massive threat to the entirety of Zangarmarsh, because in addition to hogging all the water, they also have an affinity for enslaving other races. In fact, many within their workforce are members of the Greyheart tribe, a group of broken Draenei that were sold into slavery after their own ruler betrayed them in a lust for power. Aside from exploiting the prolonged suffering of a devolved group of space goats, the Coilfang Naga are also pretty flush with cash, as they've been able to afford to outsource the entire construction and maintenance of the Coilfang Reservoir to the leper gnomes. And that's pretty impressive, considering that if we were to try and price a massive underground water pumping station that spanned an entire region and was not only able to drain, but filter and store that water, we'd be looking at around 200 million US dollars, which, if we do some wild token algebra, would come out to roughly 1.5 trillion gold. Okay, so the Coilfang are essentially just really rich and angry Nagas that are trying to suck up all the water from the planet that's kind of already destroyed anyways. Who'd really care about this sort of thing? Druids. Specifically, the Cenarian Expedition, who are a group of Night Elves and Tauren based in Zangarmarsh. They were sent by some environmentalists of the Cenarian Circle back on Azeroth to study and learn from the nature of the Outland. Now, they weren't the only one who felt like something was up, because the delicate ecology of the entire region has been thrown out of balance as a result of what's been going down at the Coilfang Reservoir. Parts of the land are drying up, unnatural phenomena are corrupting and destroying the marsh's native flora and fauna, and these tiny spore creatures are making a sound that I can only assume is unbridled anger. But one thing's for sure, it's up to us to dive headfirst into the Coilfang Reservoir, stop Lady Vashj, and save Zangarmarsh from drying up. Our journey begins in the slave pens, a massive cavern with which the Coilfang Naga use to house their slave workforce. Here, thousands of captives endlessly toil away in the damp and murky environment, all to fuel Lady Vashj's relentless war machine. In order to liberate these captives, we first have to track down their taskmaster, Manu. Manu is one of the Broken, a subrace of Draenei that have been twisted and deformed by the demonic energies unleashed by the orcs on Outland. Now, when the Coilfang originally invaded Zangarmarsh, many of these Broken tried desperately to escape the area, but not Manu. He instead saw this as an opportunity. So he sold out his entire tribe to the Coilfang in exchange for his own life and for somewhat of a middle management position within their ranks, which eventually panned out to be the slave master of his once beloved kin. This betrayal also tainted his shamanistic training, which in turn was actually a power gain for him, as it ended up corrupting his elemental totems, making him even stronger than before. Sad thing is, though, Manu is actually the reason why the Coilfang have so many Broken within their slave workforce, because if not for him, hundreds more would have escaped Zangarmarsh, but instead, they waste away here in the depths of the slave pens. Now, I think that's worth the kill from us. Now let's talk about this lobster, because this is no ordinary crustacean. This is Rockmar the Crackler, the lord of the Lobstroct of Zangarmarsh, and he and his kin were here way before the Coilfang took hold. Following Draenor's destruction, Rockmar fled deep within Zangarmarsh for sanctuary, and while he was able to adapt to his new home, the chaotic and fell energies expelled by the shattering of the planet certainly left their mark, as Rockmar had grown to a colossal size, way larger than any other Lobstroct. But this might came with the price of him also being in a constant state of pain and agony, and he was coping as good as anyone could have in that situation until the Coilfang showed up and started conquering the area. And being glorified lobsters, they didn't really stand a chance against that kind of opposition, so the Naga subjugated them and used them as tools in order to get the wildlife to fall in line so they didn't have to get their hands dirty. This actually ended up breaking Rockmar's will, which in turn sent him into an inconsolable state of rage. So honestly, we're kind of doing him a little bit of a favor here by putting him out of his misery. Sleep well, my angry lobster friend. Tucked away in a small grotto lies our final target in the slave pens, a testament to both the beauty and horror of the ecology of Zangar Marsh, the lumbering behemoth known as Quagmiran. Quagmiran is a fungal giant who, like Rockmar, had been here for quite a long time, and also like Rockmar, he was subjugated and driven mad by the Coilfang Naga. Now there's another fungal giant who we'll meet later named Hungerfin, who Quagmaran ruled over the natural cave systems with before the Naga arrived, but as a result of his rather compromised state, the natural wildlife of the caves has gotten a bit chaotic, as Hungerfin has struggled a little bit to keep the peace on his own. Sadly, this guy is just too far gone to ever be in a state again where he can rule, so ending him here is the least we can do. And with that, our work at the slave pens is complete. Now, with the backbone of the Coilfang workforce gone, it's time to turn our attention to their natural resource reserves located in the Underbog. The Underbog is home to the last bit of natural life left within the Coilfang Reservoir. The only Naga presence in this section defends the structure that they built to house their massive Hydra god, Gazan, and that's by design, because this area serves as a natural habitat, not only to some of the rarest flora and fauna known to man, but also to the most powerful species of animal life in Zangar Marsh. And that's too valuable of an asset for the Coilfang to have, so we gotta go in and clean house. Up first is Hungerfin, the fungal giant who ruled over the cave systems with Quagmiran from earlier. But unlike his friend, Hungerfin has somehow eluded the Naga for quite some time. How exactly, I'm not really sure, but one thing is for certain, he really likes this plant over here called the Underspore. It's said to be his most prized possession, and he has tended to it for over a millennia. So to say that he's a tad bit aggressive when people get a bit too close to it is a bit of an understatement. And since we need that plant for a quest, well, this story kind of ends itself. After putting an end to Hungerfin, we delve deeper into the cavern. As we pass by lumbering fungal giants and majestic spore bats, we begin to approach a massive metal structure. This structure, filled with the Coilfang Naga and Merkblood subjugates, is meant to contain the massive Naga Hydra god known as Gazan. And there's a little bit of a scholastic debate here as far as where this thing comes from. Historians on Azeroth have long disagreed about whether or not the massive mutated hydras of the Outland share a common ancestry to the hydras on Azeroth, but one thing is clear. These things have been around since ancient times, and Gazan is one of the most infamous and fearsome hydras in the Outland. Because of that, he was a prime target for the Coilfang subjugation, and now resides under the control of Lady Vashj herself. And that's just too strong of a weapon for Vashj to have at her disposal, so we gotta take it out. After escaping Gazan's containment chamber, we descend further down a narrow tunnel filled with Fenrays and Lycal stingers. But as we continue down the dingy corridor, we could start to make out a faint growling over the droned hum of Lycal wings. And sure enough, we come across our next target, Swamp Lord Musaluk. Now this guy's got quite the interesting story. He's a bit of an oddity for two main reasons. One, he's the ruler of a broken tribe known as the Merkblood. But unlike most rulers, Musaluk prefers to stay separated from his tribe, preferring instead to roam the caverns beneath Zangar Marsh alone. And two, take a look at his little pet friend over there, Claw. Looks a bit druidic, huh? Well, that's because it is. Claw is in fact a druid that got stuck in bear form when he was tamed by Musaluk, meaning that 100% Blizzard confirmed hunters are able to tame druids when they're in animal form. Nice. And, cool as this is, that trapped druid over there is our friend, so we're forced to best Musaluk so we could free the druid. Sorry, buddy. With Musaluk gone, we push further towards the back of the Underbog. But as we approach, a calm stillness fills the air, devoid of the vibrant sounds of bustling life that have filled the Underbog so far. The ground is littered with stray wildlife corpses, and the deafening silence of death cakes the cavern's walls. We have arrived at our final stop in the Underbog, the lair of the infamous Blackstalker herself. Now, the Blackstalker is the queen of a species known as the Spore Walkers, a deadly towering classification of predators that are native to the wetlands of Zangar Marsh. They are dangerously aggressive and prowl the wilds, hunting and eating any wildlife they come across, and they've got a variety of tools to do so, like toxic spores that they use to paralyze their prey, and an apparatus on their face that emits a laser that is stronger than even the top-of-the-line goblin-engineered ones. They've also got a natural propensity for psychic abilities, which is particularly useful for the Naga when they need to subjugate other races. Despite their rather violent tendencies, however, they make great pets, if you manage to tame one, as they are quite loyal and affectionate once that killer instinct is soothed out of them. Besides a skilled hunter, Spore Walkers are also fiercely loyal to their great mother, the Blackstalker. Now, this is not an edgy name for a particularly infamous Spore Walker. Rather, it's a title shared among a long lineage of Great Mothers. There is only ever one Great Mother, and she always hatches from one of the eggs left behind when the previous Great Mother passes on. And it looks like we'll be continuing that cycle of lineage as we finally put down the current Blackstalker. And with that, we have successfully undermined several of the Coilfang Naga's strategic resources, leaving our next target to be none other than the very heart of the Coilfang Reservoir, the massive mechanical engine that keeps the water flowing, known as the Steamvault. The Steamvault serves as the mechanical heart of the Naga's draining operations in Zangar Marsh. The mechanisms on display within the massive cavern supply the power for the actual removing of the marsh's waters, and as a result, the Steamvault is perhaps the most strategically important wing of the Coilfang Reservoir, and it's up to us to dismantle this impressive display of aquatic infrastructure. As we make our way down the stairs, the sounds of hissing steam, groaning pipes, and whirling gears permeate the cavern walls. But a voice, almost like a siren's call, stands out among the noise, and that beautiful serenade would belong to our first target, Hydromancer Thespia, close confidant and childhood friend of Lady Vashj, once delighted in the art and the music during the height of the Night Elf Empire. But her passion for the arts washed away, along with her friends and family, when they were sucked into the depths of Azeroth during the Great Sundering. In the millennia that followed after the elves transformed into the hateful Naga, Thespia would follow her childhood friend Lady Vashj just as she had done before. Only this time, the two were working towards a much more sinister agenda. And given that she is now one of the 3 main overseers of the Steamvault, I think that's reason enough to take her down. As we make our way down the stairs, the sounds of hissing steam, groaning pipes, and whirling gears permeate the cavern walls. Diving deeper into the Steamvault, we begin to notice something rather familiar, almost gnomish about the architecture. The attention to detail is impeccable, and there's no way that the Naga, with their slimy hands and all, could have pulled off this level of welding. The only person of gnomish stature with high enough craftsmanship to pull this off and low enough morals to do it for the Naga is Mech'Janir Steamrigger. Mech'Janir Steamrigger serves as our next adversary in the Steamvault. Now, the Naga didn't have the means to construct the Coilfang Reservoir on their own, as it took 2 main schools of discipline to do so. 1, a mastery of arcane energies, which the Naga could do, and 2, an in-depth knowledge of mechanical engineering, which the Naga were lacking in. And that's where the leper gnomes come into play. See, what the Naga lacked in engineering prowess, they made up for with fat stacks of gold. And they used those fat stacks to outsource the operation and maintenance of the mechanical portion of the reservoir to none other than the leper gnomes. And their gnomish connection is our next adversary, Mech'Janir Steamrigger. After the radiation of Gnomergon, many of the gnome survivors fell victim to the fallout, and as a result, transformed into leper gnomes. Among them was Steamrigger, who, granted, took a hit to his sanity from the illness, but retained much of his technical skills and is still very much dedicated to his craft. And while he was able to hang on to his intellect, whatever compassion and ethics he had before were completely gone. So he wandered around Azeroth as a mechanic for hire, selling his knowledge to the highest bidder, who, many of times, were not exactly the most honorable of characters. Eventually, though, he did land a thick contract with Vashj and the Coilfang to operate the intricate machinery that keeps the Steamvaults going. So, since we want to take down the entire operation, we gotta also take down the brains behind it. With the primary overseers of Thespia and Steamrigger dealt with, the doorway to the Steamvault's central control panel opens, putting us within reach of dealing a critical blow to the Coilfang's plans. Now for our last target, the main overseer of the Steamvault known as Warlord Calathresh. Aside from hogging all the water, the Coilfang used the depths of the reservoir as a place to experiment with the various liquids found deep beneath the outland's surface. Specifically, they were working with a mysterious substance that, once ingested, would purge someone of all of their fears and give them an impressive amount of extra strength. And Vashj was particularly interested in streamlining this process so she could outfit her entire military force with this elixir. But in its early stages, it was rather volatile and volunteers for test trials were in short supply. Despite the risks, however, Calathresh stepped up and was among the first to try the dark elixir, and as a result, was among the first to reap its rewards. And as a token of appreciation, Vashj charged Calathresh with guarding the Steamvault, which came with a complimentary lifetime supply of this new elixir. But now he serves as the final obstacle, standing between us and a much better chance of victory. As the whirling gears and rustic pistons of the Steamvault come to a screeching halt, the path stopping Vashj and saving Zangar Marsh becomes clear. We must strike at Vashj's inner sanctum, known as Serpentshrine Cavern, to ensure that the waters of the Outland are able to flow freely once again. With her slave force liberated, her strategic resources ransacked, and the very heart of her infrastructure disabled, Lady Vashj monitors what remains of the Coilfang's operations from her seat of power. Far more at home here, among the waters of the reservoir, than locked within the cold stone walls of the Black Temple. Vashj maintains a close eye on her minions so that she may personally oversee that we do not stop the draining of Zangar Marsh. Our first target is Hydros the Unstable, a water elemental teetering on the brink of life and death. Now I want you to think about your average water system for a second. Every Brita pitcher, every water fountain, every fish tank, they all need one thing, and that's a filter. And likewise, Coilfang Reservoir needs a filter too, and that is none other than poor Hydros over here. See, before this, Hydros was in a constant state of pain due to his volatile condition, and the Coilfang Naga figured out a way to stabilize him, but in exchange for that, he had to keep guard over the entire reservoir and quell any invaders. And that was pretty cool in the beginning. But then Vashj figured out that if they made him soak up the impurities of the reservoir's waters in his unstable form, and then they purified him into his stable form, it would also filter out all of the impurities in the water. And at that point, the relationship was no longer mutually beneficial. So here he sits, suffering in eternal agony, forced to ping-pong between a toxic and non-toxic state just to filter out some murky Naga water. To be honest, I think we're doing him a favor here by putting him out of his misery. So here you go, buddy. Next up is a giant fish monster known as the Lurker Below. Now there's not a ton behind this guy other than he is confirmed to be a member of the Kraken species by the game files, of which there are very, very few members. Kraken are the mighty aquatic minions of the Waterlord Neptulon the Tidehunter, and they are summoned by him personally from the elemental plane. The Kraken are split into two groups, one being the giant squid variant and the other being the smaller fish-like variant, which is what the Lurker is. It's pretty unclear as to how we got here though. The Kraken were a species that predated any mortal race, so we could have been lurking in these caverns long before Vashj arrived, much like some of the other natural denizens. But cavern native or not, leaving a powerful minion of the Tidehunter around Vashj is probably not a good idea, so we fish him up. After disposing the Tidehunter's minion, we head towards the far side of the cavern, where we come across a massive opening that leads to a tunnel. As we traverse the tunnel, the all too familiar sounds of and fill the air, growing louder and louder with each passing moment, until finally, the tunnel opens into a tall, half-flooded grotto, inhabited not only by a herd of feverish murlocs, but also by our next target, Morgrim Tidewalker. Morgrim Tidewalker is a sea giant, a gentle and aquatic creature created by the Titans to help them dredge out the seas and lift the land from the sea floor. And what's interesting about Morgrim is that he breaks a lot of the conventional norms of a sea giant. See, the sea giants are tasked with keeping the oceans clean and safe, and they really don't mess with anyone else unless they are posing an immediate threat to the seas or are corrupting its waters. And the Naga do a lot of corrupting of the waters. So the sea giants really don't like the Naga. My best guess is that Vashj used her mastery of subjugation to trick Morgrim into thinking that she's trying to protect what little water that's left on the outland. And the best way to do that is for her to collect it all in the reservoir where Morgrim is close by. Despite breaking sea giant customs, Morgrim, like other sea giants, likes to fart when he's idle. And his bubbles are especially impressive. And he's brought along some of his Murloc friends, who happen to worship him as a god. This is totally normal though, as Murlocs generally worship the most powerful being in their local body of water. Not gonna lie, Morgrim's got a pretty sweet setup here, ignorant to Vashj's nefarious intentions or not. But a 10,000-pound sea giant with a fanatical following of Murlocs is just too much to leave hanging in the balance, so we've got to take him out. As we delve deeper into the grotto, the air begins to thicken. Salty steam fills the air, blanketing the area in a scalding mist. The ground rumbles methodically with the lumbering steps of the fungal giants patrolling the area. But off in a dingy corner of the room, lit only by a dying fire, we spot our next target, Fathom Lord Carathress. Not much is known about Carathress. It's safe to assume that he's one of Vashj's elite, as he has 3 royal guards with him at all times. And she's trusted him with interrogating and torturing Cirillum, a captured broken of the Ashtung tribe who held information regarding the Ashtung's plan to overthrow Illidan Stormrage at the Black Temple. Which, honestly, is a pretty big intelligence asset, so yeah, Carathress must at least have some top-level clearance on him. High-ranking or not, he stands in between us and stopping Vashj, so we see to it personally that Illum's secret stays under wraps. After freeing Illum, we continue our descent into the final layer of the grotto. Thick cobwebs cake the stone walls of the tunnel that glisten from the moisture of the reservoir. Dim torches and the screaming cries of anguish serve as our only guide down these treacherous halls that eventually lead into a tall room where spellbinders of the Greyheart tribe have trapped our next target, Leotheris the Blind. Leotheris is one of 5 blood elves originally sent to Illidan Stormrage by Kael'thas Sunstrider himself to be trained as a demon hunter. Now this training is especially brutal and intense. 3 out of the 5 just straight up died halfway through. One prodigal student named Veritas Felsoul managed to get through it and now trains more demon hunters under Illidan directly at the Black Temple. And the 5th, well, that's Leotheris, who unfortunately was driven insane from the training, was then exiled as a result of that, and ended up being possessed by demons somewhere along the way. Eventually, though, he made his way to Vashj and started wreaking havoc within her domain. But interestingly enough, rather than put him down, she decided to keep him imprisoned instead. As to why, it's unclear. Maybe Vashj wanted to keep him around to turn him back into Illidan at some point. Maybe she wanted to study him to see if she could learn about the effects of the rigorous demon hunter training methods. While her motive remains unclear, ours are not. Any potential asset within Vashj's grasp must be dealt with, so we take it upon ourselves to put an end to his sanity once and for all. After slaying the demon hunter, we make our way to the exit of the tunnel, which spills back into the main grotto of the caverns. Here, Vashj has rallied the remaining naga into a frenzy in a last-ditch effort to stop us from foiling her plans. But they're no match, as we quickly dispose the remainder of the Coilfang's forces guarding the mysterious mechanisms that block us from their matron's seat of power. After some tinkering, the very foundations of the cavern begin to rumble as several rustic and waterlogged platforms rise deep from beneath the water, forming a bridge which grants us passage to Vashj's throne room. Finally, our heroic assault comes to a head. Standing before us is none other than the matron of the Coilfang herself, Lady Vashj. And while our path was long and grueling, it pales in comparison to the several lifetimes lived over by the Naga ruler. Vashj was once a royal highborn, born the daughter of Lestharia Vashj, ruler of the beautiful city of Vashj'ir. She enjoyed a life of prestige, luxury, and decadence. And she even worked closely with Queen Azshara, serving as her primary handmaiden. She felt as if it were her birthright to serve the queen, copying every detail about her from her mannerisms and behavior to her hairstyle and clothing. Vashj did everything she could to remain in the queen's favor, and that was her sole purpose in life. But, like many highborn, she saw a watery grave when her city sunk beneath the waves of Azeroth during the Great Sundering. And as a result of the pact made between her queen and the old god of the deep, Vashj was reborn as a sinister and spiteful Naga. 10,000 years later, Vashj answered the call of Illidan Stormrage, and together, along with Kael'thas Sunstrider, joined the Betrayer in his journey to the Outland. As a reward for her loyalty, and by proving her Naga to be a valuable asset, Illidan named her as one of his most trusted lieutenants, and provided her and her Naga with the means to set up operations in Zangar Marsh, where they would go on to build the Coilfang Reservoir in an effort to seize control of the planet's dwindling water supply. She ravaged the luscious marshlands, subjugated its indigenous wildlife, and exploited the land's natural resources in an effort to win the favor of her new master. She entered this world with the sole purpose of serving a master, and by our hand, she will leave it failing another. I hope you guys enjoyed our lore tour of the Coilfang Reservoir. If you like this kind of thing, please throw me a like and a sub. I'd really appreciate it. And if you really like this kind of thing, stop by the stream sometime. I go through and uncover a lot of these stories and secrets before making these videos live on stream, and it's a lot of fun uncovering these with a group. And we've got some great lore minds in the chat who love to speculate. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.